President Trump recently unveiled his plan for a Palestinian-Israeli peace agreement. A resolution has been presented to the UN Security Council condemning the Trump peace plan. Palestinian leader Mahmoud Abbas and Israeli ambassador to the UN, Danny Danon, are scheduled to debate concerning the resolution at the Security Council. Remember, when a peace agreement is reached between Palestinians and Israelis, the Bible foretells that the final 7 years to Armageddon will begin. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we talk a lot about President Trump's peace plan, which he released on November the 28th. Of course, it had been dangled out there for a long time. However, he only recently released it, and it is causing all kinds of debate worldwide. We're going to talk today about how is the Trump peace plan actually progressing. Now, before we dive in, let me take just a divergence here, and let me cause you to remember that our spring trip to the Middle East, our Endtime prophecy tour, is coming up May 1st through May the 16th. Now, it's just not to the Middle East, however. It also is going to cover much of Europe, because we're going through Israel, and then we're going to tour the Holy Roman Empire. Sad to say, most people don't even know what the Holy Roman Empire is. They couldn't tell you the difference between the Roman Empire and the Holy Roman Empire. It is absolutely impossible to have a comprehensive understanding of Bible prophecy unless you understand those differences, unless you really understand the Holy Roman Empire, unless you realize the Holy Roman Empire was recently reborn. I'm talking about within the last 10 to 12 years. It was reborn. Now, why is all that so important? Because the Bible tells us that the Antichrist, the political leader of the end-time world government, and the false prophet, the spiritual leader of the end-time world government, will both come from this reborn Holy Roman Empire. On this tour, we're going to visit the home of the founder of the Holy Roman Empire. We're going to go into great detail. It will greatly enhance your understanding of end-time events. I highly recommend this particular tour. So coming up this May the 1st through May the 16th, we would love for you to go with us. Judy and I will be with you every step of the way, and we will be teaching from place to place so that when we see someplace, you can go right to the Bible and understand the significance of it all. So it's going to be unbelievably important. If you can go, now personally, I think this is our very best tour that we do. So if you can go, I highly recommend for you to go on this tour. If you're interested, simply call us, 1-800-END-TIME. Ask to speak to someone about the tour. They're experts on it. They know exactly how to answer your question. They'll send you any information that you would request. If you have questions, they'll answer your questions, and then you can really think about it, or you can make a decision on the spot. Anyway, give us a call. 1-800-END-TIME is the number, and simply ask to speak to someone about the tour. Okay, so the Trump peace plan now has been out for less than 2 weeks, and yet it is reverberating around the world. So we're going to talk today about how is the Trump peace plan actually progressing. Well, what happened was Mahmoud Abbas, he said, I don't want to read it. I don't want to take a phone call from President Trump. I don't want to accept a letter from President Trump. I am not interested. However, once he realized that President Trump was going to move forward to implement his plan, whether Mahmoud Abbas participated or whether he did not, all of a sudden he realizes he doesn't have a choice. Now, it's obvious that he has seen what's in the plan. Someone has shared it with him, plus the text of it is on the internet at whitehouse.gov. So in response to this, Mahmoud Abbas now has gotten two of his friends, Indonesia and Tunisia, to present a resolution to the UN Security Council condemning the plan. Now, Abbas himself did not present it because he's not a member of the United Nations, so he does not have the power to it, but he is able to go there and speak once a resolution is presented. So now then, the Palestinian Authority requests to delay the UN vote on the Trump peace plan. We're going to talk about why. This comes from today's Jerusalem Post. The Palestinian Authority has requested to delay a UN vote on the Trump administration's peace plan, multiple Israeli media outlets reported on Monday. The U.S. broke its silence on Sunday evening and suggested amendments for the UN Security Council resolution regarding the Trump administration's peace plan, the Jerusalem Post has learned. Now, when we get back, we're going to go in detail about this. Why is all this? What are the factors? What's under consideration? And how does it all pertain to the fulfillment of Bible prophecy, the most important prophetic fulfillment in the last 2,000 years? Don't go away.
About our trip, it was a wonderful experience. We totally enjoyed the time spent with other believers, worshiping and experiencing the places where Christ walked. One of our favorites was being on Mount Moriah, where the Holy of Holies are, the Dome of the Spirit. And the teachings that Brother Baxter did was so enlightening. It was so much to take in. It will take us another month or two to really grasp the full extent of the knowledge we received on this trip. Our tour guide in Israel was fantastic. He was very knowledgeable. I think God chose him just for us. Thanks, Jana. Our lives will never be the same. We will try to do this tour again. Mike and Julie L., Cayman Islands.
Join us May 1st through May 16th, 2020, for a trip to the wonderful land of Israel and the Holy Roman Empire reborn.
We've seen Bible prophecy fulfilled like never before. From the halls of the United Nations to the Temple Mount in Jerusalem, Endtime Ministries continues to reveal the Bible prophecy in the news headlines around the world every day. Whether it's through our broadcast or online at our Jerusalem Prophecy College, your gifts enable us to put vital materials in the hands of those who need it most. Because of you, we continue to replace fear with faith in the hearts of Christians around the world. We will continue to see prophecy come to pass at an even swifter pace. We need your support. Your donation of any amount enables us to continue to broadcast and be a voice in the ever-growing censored media. To become a partner or give a one-time gift, visit endtime.com or call 1-800-END-TIME right now. That's 800-363-8463. Go online now. Visit endtime.com.
In order for all of us to really understand what is going on, and this is eminently important, we're going to slow down here and take our time, because the Trump peace plan was put on the table November the 28th. Now then, it's obviously scared Mahmoud Abbas, the head of the Palestinians, because here we are 12 or 14 days later, and he has managed to get this before the highest body at the United Nations, the UN Security Council. Now, this is where international law is finalized. This is the make or break place. So the Palestinian Authority had devised a resolution presented by two of its friends, Tunisia and Indonesia. However, things have caused Mahmoud Abbas, the head of the Palestinians, to change his mind. Now then, he has requested a delay in the UN vote on the Trump peace plan. Now, I'm going to go through this with you slowly because I don't want you to miss it. It's really important. The Palestinian Authority has requested to delay a UN vote on the Trump administration's peace plan. Multiple Israeli media outlets reported on Monday. The U.S. broke its silence on Sunday evening and suggested amendments for the UN Security Council resolution regarding the Trump administration's peace plan. Now, let's pause just a moment, because this particular resolution presented everything in a certain light. However, now the U.S. has made it known that it's going to present amendments to the resolution, and because of the presentation of these amendments, Mahmoud Abbas said, wait a minute, I want to delay the vote then. Okay, now let's continue on here. While the exact wording is still under consideration, a vote is expected to take place on Tuesday. You're going to find out in a moment that because of different factors, that's now apparently been delayed. A person familiar with the discussions told the Jerusalem Post that the U.S. is willing to support a resolution that aims to bring Israel and the Palestinians back to negotiations. All right, let's stop right there. We've had no negotiations since 2014. Once President Trump made the decision to recognize Jerusalem as Israel's capital and also to move our embassy to Jerusalem, Abbas said, I will never, ever again go to a peace table where the United States is the arbiter. I'm not going back there anymore. The only way I will consider any future negotiations is if it is overseen by international arbiters. Okay, so here we are now. Now then, our amendments to this resolution are designed to bring the Palestinians back to the table. It's not clear if the suggested amendments will be added to the text. In the event that Tunisia and Indonesia do not adopt the American comments, the U.S. mission to the UN is expected to veto it. Now, in case you're not familiar with the UN Security Council and how it functions, there are 15 members at the UN Security Council, the UN's most powerful body. Well, these 15 members, 10 of them are rotating members. They're temporary members, but 5 of them are permanent members. The 5 permanent members are the United States, France, Great Britain, Russia, and China. These 5 permanent members have veto power over every resolution presented at the UN Security Council. So if all 15 members were to vote for a resolution except for one of the permanent members, then it still would be vetoed. That means the United States, among Russia, China, France, Great Britain, those 5 powers have veto power. So what this is saying is, if the resolutions now presented by the United States are not accepted by Tunisia and Indonesia, then America would be forced to use its veto power. Now, according to a source familiar with the discussions between the U.S., Tunisia, and other members of the UN Security Council, criticism against the U.S. has softened, and there is a desire to avoid promoting a resolution that will be vetoed. Now, the U.S. doesn't like to use its veto power. There are some people that would like to totally eliminate the veto power so that the UN could act as a bona fide world governmental system. However, the U.S. has never been willing to bow the knee to a one world government to the extent that we have no recourse. Therefore, the veto power has remained in place. Now, the softening of the language comes after Jared Kushner's briefing with the UN Security Council members on Thursday. So Jared Kushner, the principal author of the peace plan called the Deal of the Century. He went to the UN Security Council last Thursday, and he consulted with them explaining why everything was so important. So now then, after this action by Kushner, apparently their opposition to the Trump's peace deal has been softening. Kushner was accompanied at the UN by Avi Berkowitz and Brian Hook. The source added that there are numerous countries who are considering abstaining if the wording is not changed. A U.S. administration official told the Jerusalem Post, the international community has shown a desire to see the two parties negotiate and realizes that now is not the time for resolutions that won't advance the cause of peace. Now let's pause a moment, because let's say that they put this resolution as is on the table, or as it is amended on the table. If they cannot get 9 in favor of it, then it will not pass without a U.S. veto. They don't want that to happen, because now all of a sudden the world is turning against the Palestinian stance. So now they're trying to negotiate in such a way that either the resolution as amended would pass, or at least there would end up being no veto. Well, the U.S. would like to have a resolution that encourages the sides to negotiate instead of a one that simply criticizes one side. In other words, Israel saying, we'll do this, 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 this. How about you, Palestinians? And they say, we're not interested in anything you have to say. We're not interested in any negotiation. Well, that has become a put-off to many of the nations of the world. Now, Israeli ambassador to the UN, Danny Danon, told the Jerusalem Post that American pressure had proven effective. We see that the current wording of the resolution is better than the original version, he said in an interview Sunday night. Instead of condemnation of the U.S. and the peace plan, the new resolution does not mention the U.S. by name and simply calls to respect previous decisions. Now let's pause right there. So it does not go head to head with the U.S., a power which has veto power. So you're beating your head against a stone wall. And then secondly, it simply refers to previous decisions. Now, this is something a lot of people like to say. They like to say that previous UN decisions call for a total withdrawal of Israel from the West Bank, the area of Judea, Samaria, and also a withdrawal from East Jerusalem. By only saying respect to previous decisions, there's a lot of debate over what previous decisions have to say. If we have time in the program today, we will talk about Resolution 242, which was passed shortly after the '67 war and addressed where Israel should withdraw to and where the lines for a future Israeli state should be. Well, here it's saying we're going to respect previous decisions, but some previous decisions of the UN have said one thing, and some opinions about the previous UN resolutions say another. That leaves a lot of things open for negotiation, which up until now, most negotiations over the last 20 years have started from, okay, withdrawal from occupied territories except for small land swaps. Well, Trump's plan is totally different. It is a game changer, and we're going to explain that to you as we go on. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres will spearhead the discussion, followed by a speech from Palestinian Authority head Mahmoud Abbas and a response from Danny Danon, ambassador from Israel to the United Nations. Here's what Danon had to say. In my speech, I intend to focus on the Palestinian refusal to negotiate. Mahmoud Abbas has said, we don't want to talk to you, we don't want to negotiate. Therefore, Danny Danon is going to say, you can't get peace. And if they're unwilling to negotiate, then we're going to move unilaterally to actually reach a peace deal. Because you can't make peace with someone that won't talk to you, but the present situation is unacceptable. So Danon says, I will focus on the fact that Mahmoud Abbas says we're just not interested in negotiation at all. Okay, now let me flesh this out with another article that was published on this just today. Palestinian withdrawals request for UN vote on the U.S. Middle East plan, according to diplomats. This comes from Israel National News just today. The Palestinian Authority has abandoned its request for a vote at the UN Security Council Tuesday on rejecting the U.S. Mideast plan over a lack of international support, diplomats say. Now, this is a big development because up until now, almost all of the world has been against Israel. But now then, this resolution that is being presented actually by Mahmoud Abbas, the front people for it are Indonesia and Tunisia, but they're saying we've got to withdraw this because we don't have the support that we need to pass it. Introduced by Indonesia and Tunisia, the resolution risks not having 9 out of 15 votes in its favor, the minimum required for adoption, provided there is no veto by a permanent member, the diplomats told AFP. AFP is Agence France Presse. Palestinian Authority President Mahmoud Abbas is set to take part Tuesday in a session on President Donald Trump's January 28th plan, which paves the way for Israeli annexation of much of Judea and Samaria, which is the West Bank, but also allows for a demilitarized Palestinian state. Okay, let's stop right here. The reason this is so critical is because Israel has never openly endorsed a Palestinian state, but Trump's plan lays it on the table and says, okay, for Israel's security, they have to have this, 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 and this. But in return, you're going to get the Palestinian state that you have long lobbied for. So all of a sudden, it's a big game changer. It is actually no longer being nebulous, no longer being obscure. It is actually put into writing. The Trump peace plan, 181 pages. You can read it for yourself at whitehouse.gov. It is laying on the line how peace can, after all of these years, suddenly be reached. Now, let me remind you, your Bible prophesies that there is going to be a peace agreement between Palestinians and Israelis. And if this is the plan that will meet the requirements of the prophecies of the Bible teaches that when there's a plan that does 5 specific things, that you and I will enter the final 7 years to the Battle of Armageddon and the second coming of Jesus Christ to this earth. I would remind you that the day Jesus left this earth, when he was caught up from the Mount of Olives and disappeared into the sky, 2 angelic messengers appeared behind the apostles, saying, you men of Galilee, why stand you gazing up into the heavens? Don't you know that this same Jesus that was taken away from you into the heaven shall so come again in like manner as you have seen him go? So we have a promise that Jesus is coming back. And part of the scripture tells us that he will come back 7 years after a Palestinian-Israeli peace agreement, which is to be debated at the United Nations tomorrow. Well, this is getting serious. The sudden Palestinian withdrawal of their request came after the United States, which enjoys veto power as a permanent member of the UN Security Council, proposed a series of amendments that could come for a vote at the session attended by Abbas. In proposals seen by AFP, the United States would significantly alter the text to remove references to 1967 lines being the basis of peace. It would also cut out a line stating that Jewish communities built in Judea and Samaria since 1967 are illegal. Both of those things would go away. The United States is also seeking to eliminate language that equaled Eastern Jerusalem with Judea and Samaria. The Trump plan calls for recognition of the contested holy city as Israel's undivided capital while establishing a capital on its outskirts for the Palestinians. So the majority of Jerusalem will stay under Israeli control, but there's part of extreme East Jerusalem that they're saying that can be your capital. Now, the Palestinians have long held out and said, we've got to have a Palestinian state with a capital in Jerusalem. Well, technically, this would satisfy those demands. While recognizing that the Trump plan departs from the internationally endorsed terms of reference and parameters, the U.S. wants the resolution to state that the Security Council welcomes discussion on this proposal to advance the cause of peace. Discussions are continuing on the conditions, a diplomat said, on condition of anonymity. So that's where we are right now. We're in the middle of this whole thing on this peace plan. Trump has lit a firestorm, and somewhere down the line, maybe sooner rather than later, there's going to be a peace agreement. And then you and I can mark our calendar. We just entered the final 7 years to Armageddon. Give us a call. The number to call, 1-800-Endtime. Inquire about our tour. Enroll in Jerusalem Prophecy College. It's important.
Move Mountains with Irvin Baxter. This book by Irvin's grandson provides 30 days of devotion that will enhance your relationship with God and others. Authentic illustrations from early morning devotions at Endtime will help you find your purpose and eliminate fears. Commit to taking this 30-day journey and experience real life change. Get your book for only $14.99. Call 1-800-363-8463 or go to endtime.com/move.
About our trip, it was a wonderful experience. We totally enjoyed the time spent with other believers, worshiping and experiencing the places where Christ walked. One of our favorites was being on Mount Moriah, where the Holy of Holies are, the Dome of the Spirit. And the teachings that Brother Baxter did was so enlightening. It was so much to take in. It will take us another month or two to really grasp the full extent of the knowledge we received on this trip. Our tour guide in Israel was fantastic. He was very knowledgeable. I think God chose him just for us. Thanks, Jana. Our lives will never be the same. We will try to do this tour again. Mike and Julie L., Cayman Islands.
Join us May 1st through May 16th, 2020, for a trip to the wonderful land of Israel and the Holy Roman Empire reborn.
If your station only carries the first 30 minutes of End of the Age, go to endtime.com and click the watch button to continue today's broadcast. You can also finish up later by clicking the archive button.
Now, let me, before we dive back into our substance of our program today, just remind you that there's one thing that I highly recommend that everyone do because of where we are right now. You need to acquire an in-depth working understanding of all these factors, and you need to be able to put your finger on the scriptures, because you're going to need to answer the questions of your family, of your friends, of your neighbors, of your relatives, of your co-workers, of your church members. You're going to need to really understand these things. Now, the Jerusalem Prophecy College is a total of 12 semesters, 155 lessons. You go through this entire curriculum and you will be well equipped to be used of God in a very special way during this final 7 years. You say, well, I've got plenty of time. I don't think so. It could well happen that we could enter the final 7 years yet in 2020. I can't promise that right now. But this thing is not standing still. The Trump peace plan has left the station and it's rumbling down the tracks. And don't you ever forget it. President Trump would love to have a deal inked by the elections, November the 3rd of 2020. Cannot tell you right now what will or will not happen. However, I can tell you there is going to be a peace agreement. The only question is when. I think there's quite a strong possibility it could happen in 2020. That's the reason I would urge you, strongly urge you, to enroll in the Jerusalem Prophecy College today. Now, it's not hard. If the word college scares you, don't let it scare you. If you listen to this program, the college will be presented just like this program is presented. We take the time to break everything down, and you'll have the video in front of you. You'll listen to the video. You'll take the quiz, push the button. It'll grade the quiz for you. If you don't pass, you get to take the lesson over. If you do pass, you go on to the next lesson, and so on. Go through the whole curriculum, and you will be an expert on Bible prophecy and on the events that are to come. I'm talking about, you'll know more about Bible prophecy than 95% of graduates from theological seminary. I promise you that will be true. I know what I'm talking about. Okay, so if you have not yet started, why not do it today? You really should not wait another day. Enroll in JerusalemProphecyCollege.com. That's all you do. Go on your computer to JerusalemProphecyCollege.com, all lowercase. And there a page will come up for you to register. Fill out the registration, enroll in your first semester, and get started. You're going to love it. I have people come up to me all the time, changed my life. I can't believe the knowledge I acquired. And so we believe it'll be the same for you. So one more time, JerusalemProphecyCollege.com, and do it today. Because after they sign this peace agreement, you're not going to have time to be doing this. You need to be acting. You'll need to be used of God to help others. So please don't wait. Okay. Now I want to return to where we were, because other diplomats cast doubt on whether a vote could take place at a later date, considering the wide divergence in positions. So this may grind to a screeching halt. It may come to nothing. We simply do not know the answer to that. But there's another aspect of all this that I feel like all of us need to understand, and that is Resolution 242. Another article explains this, and I'm going to work my way through this article as I'm ad-libbing here off the cuff. Trump's plan takes Resolution 242 seriously. Now, let me remind you what Resolution 242 is. That's the resolution that was passed by the United Nations 5 or 6 months after the 1967 war. The 67 war occurred when Egypt and its leader, Abdel Gamal Nasser, planned a war against Israel to try to destroy Israel. Jordan agreed with Egypt, as did Syria, so they planned to wipe Israel off the map. Well, it didn't quite turn out that way. Instead, Israel defeated Jordan, Egypt, and Syria in 6 short days. It was absolutely breathtaking. Well, 5 or 6 months later, the UN passed Resolution 242. Since that time, many of the Arab people have used Resolution 242 as the excuse to say that Israel has to withdraw to 1967 lines. Now, They were already at the 1967 lines before the 67 war, but the Arabs were not satisfied. They wanted them driven into the sea. So now then, after the war is over, they're saying, okay, go back to 1967 lines. Well, that's like putting your neck back in the very noose you just got your neck out of. But nevertheless, that's what they were demanding. Let's go through this to make sure we can really understand it properly. The Trump administration's Mideast proposal is the first real attempt to give Israel what Resolution 242 promised more than 50 years ago. Borders that are not only recognized, but secure. Okay, let's not slide over the top of that. Let's make sure we get it. So Resolution 242 called for all the parties to have recognizable and secure borders. Now remember, before the 67 war, Israel was 9 miles wide at the waist. In this day of supersonic jets, of rockets, and of modern warfare, how in the world would anybody defend a country 9 miles wide at the waist? It could be overwhelmed so fast you wouldn't even have time to push the snooze on your alarm button. When an attack hit, they could sweep through that 9 miles so quickly it would be shocking. Okay, but anyway, now President Trump is pulling Resolution 242 out of the files and saying, look at this. And he used Resolution 242 to craft his famous deal of the century peace plan. Now, let's go further. Ever since the Trump administration published its Mideast peace plan, critics have vociferously claimed that it violates UN resolutions and challenges many of the internationally agreed parameters guiding peacemaking since 1967. Listen close. Nothing could be further from the truth. In fact, this is the first plan that actually relates seriously to the document every plan cites as the basis for those parameters, UN Security Council 242. The resolution was adopted in November of 1967, 5 months after Israel captured the West Bank, Gaza Strip, Golan Heights, Eastern Jerusalem, and the Sinai Peninsula in the Six-Day War. But contrary to popular belief, it was carefully crafted, we're talking about Resolution 242 now, was carefully crafted to let Israel keep some of this territory by demanding a withdrawal only from territories occupied in the recent conflict. Did not say all the territories, did not say which territories, rather than the territories or all the territories. As America's then UN ambassador, Arthur Goldberg, later said, the omitted words were not accidental. The resolution speaks of withdrawal from occupied territories without defining the extent of the withdrawal. The reason was that in the resolution's own words, a just and lasting peace would require secure and recognized boundaries for all states in the region. But the 1967 lines, according to the 1949 armistice lines, did not and could not provide secure boundaries for Israel. As Goldberg explained, the resolution called for less than a complete withdrawal of Israeli forces precisely because Israel's prior frontiers had proved to be notably insecure. And since Israel had captured these territories in a defensive rather than offensive war, the drafters considered such territorial changes fully compatible with the resolution's preamble emphasizing the inadmissibility of the acquisition of territory by war. Now, did you catch that? Resolution 242 starts out with reiterating the stance of the international community that any territories that were conquered in an aggressive war could not be kept. But if a nation fought in a defensive war, that they could keep the necessary territories in order to prevent the war from happening again. So keeping territory that was won in a defensive war is not considered illegal by the international community. But then, having successfully defeated the Arab-Soviet demand that Israel be required to cede all the territories, nobody back then envisioned a Palestinian state. The West Bank would have returned to Jordan, even though Jordan had illegally occupied it in 1948. Okay, now we got to wait here. So what's this saying? Well, back then, the Soviet Union was on the Arab side, the United States was the defender of Israel, and the Soviet Union won the wording of Resolution 242 to say all the territories. I remember back then, I was following it closely. But Arthur Goldberg, our ambassador from the United States to the United Nations, said, no, we're going to say withdraw from territories, not all the territories. Because back then they realized there was going to have to be a change of the boundaries in order to actually promise secure and recognized borders, because Israel's borders were not secure in 1967. That's the reason Egypt was ready to attack. They thought that Israel could be defeated. So now then, one more thing we should notice. The territory, we're talking about the area called Palestine, which was under the British mandate from 1917, 1920 until 1948. It was called Palestine, and the British government had promised to consider Israel's request for the establishment of a Jewish state there. Well, in the meantime, when Britain withdrew from the mandate and took their troops home, then the Arab countries were ready to destroy Israel. So what happened was, when that war commenced, it's called the War of Independence, Jordan came across the Jordan River and occupied the territory known as the West Bank, illegally, by the way, had no right to be there. Nevertheless, they kept that territory up until the 1967 war. So we're trying to sort out this puzzle because we now have a serious peace plan on the table.
Does the book of Revelation frighten you? Do its symbols confuse you? For centuries, the book of Revelation has been misunderstood and misinterpreted. In Revelation, the unveiling of Jesus Christ, Volume 1, Irvin Baxter unlocks the mystery of the book of Revelation with in-depth analysis and commentary like you've never heard before. This 10-part definitive DVD series and 268-page comprehensive commentary book covers the first 12 chapters of the book of Revelation, featuring on-location photography, classic artwork, and symbolic illustrations. You'll walk away with complete understanding and peace about the events happening during the final years on Earth. These comprehensive study tools, available for $299, will deepen your biblical understanding as you dig into the original intent of the book, answering the mysterious prophecies and symbols of the book of Revelation. Don't miss this special offer. Call now, 1-800-ENDTIME, or go to endtime.com to order. Call or go online now to get this comprehensive Bible study.
Okay, let's see if we can pull this together to make sure it's understandable. So, Resolution 242 had said there should be a peace negotiated, but the critical part was the boundaries had to be recognized by all parties so there was no dispute left, and those boundaries had to be secure. Well, there have been many peace negotiations since the time of Resolution 242, but Still no peace. It's not been settled because they've never been able to establish recognized borders with secure borders for the states in the territory. So that's where we find ourselves today. Now, I want to continue on here so that you can see what happened. So the formula up till now has made a mockery of Resolution 242 because it failed to provide Israel with secure boundaries. Yet almost every subsequent proposal retained the idea of the 1967 lines with minor adjustments, even as all of them continued paying lip service to 242. Now, for the first time, a plan has attempted to take that resolution seriously. We're talking about Trump's plan now, and provide Israel with defensible borders. That's why it assigns the Jordan Valley to Israel, reflecting the long-standing Israeli consensus that this territory is crucial to defend the country against threats from the east. Okay, now let's pause right there. So the Jordan Valley runs along the Jordan River. Under Trump's proposal, this would stay under Israeli control. Now, the term Jordan Valley is a little misleading because what makes the area critical for defense is its high ground. Yes, there's a valley there, but there's also the eastern slopes of the Judean mountains and Samarian hills. The armies that control the high ground, they have a marked advantage in any warfare. Israeli Prime Minister Yitzhak Rabin, who signed the Oslo Accords in 1993, said in his final speech to the Knesset in 1995 that Israel's security border will be located in the Jordan Valley in the broadest meaning of that term. So Yitzhak Rabin, who was trumpeted as being the big peacemaker, he won the Nobel Peace Prize for signing the Oslo Accords. Still, his very last speech, he said that we have to retain the Jordan Valley when we come to a final peace agreement. And today, both the center-right government and the main center-left opposition party agree, both parties agree, that Israel must retain the valley. One could obviously quibble with certain details of the plan. For instance, the idea of leaving some settlements as enclaves in Palestinian territory sounds like a security nightmare. And of course it is. Jesus himself warned against this, saying that those Jews living in Judea at the time of the abomination of desolation, which will happen halfway through the final 7 years, Jesus warned, saying those that are living out there will have to flee for their lives. So they're pointing out in this article that it's going to be a security nightmare. Jesus pointed that out 2,000 years ago. One could even legitimately wonder, given the experience of the last 25 years, whether any kind of Palestinian state is compatible with Israel's security. Nevertheless, Trump's plan is the first serious attempt to give Israel what Resolution 242 promised more than 50 years ago, borders that are not only recognized, but secure. As such, far from violating UN resolutions, it's actually the first plan that doesn't violate them. This provides Israel and its allies with a golden opportunity to remind the world that contrary to what is widely believed today, UN resolutions and internationally agreed parameters originally promised Israel defensible borders. Thus, all the plans that broke this promise are the ones that ought to be deemed illegitimate, not the one plan that finally seeks to keep it. Well, I know I've thrown a lot at you today. We got a few minutes left to take a few of your calls. We will be doing that. But just to try to boil all this down to its simple culmination, what we're really dealing with here is that from 1967 until now, Every single peace negotiation was stacked against Israel. Consequently, the negotiations have never culminated. However, now then, President Trump has put a plan on the table that will actually establish secure borders and at the same time will give the Palestinians their state. It's the first offer ever on the table to give the Palestinians what they long have yearned for. And also, this plan says not only will we give you a state, but we're going to fund the building of that state up to a very wonderful place. We're going to put $50 billion into this state. Now, if you have any questions about this, you can call us. You can be on the air with me right now. The number to call is 877-Endtime, 877-363-8463. I'm sure we're going to be back on this subject again. As the meetings happen, the UN Security Council will be bringing reports to you day after day because this is critical. This is big stuff. I mean, we're talking about the greatest prophetic fulfillment in 2,000 years, ladies and gentlemen. When this peace agreement is signed, you and I enter the final 7 years. Okay. Now, let's go to the phones. Let's go, first of all, to Jim calling from Florida. Hello, Jim.
Praise the Lord, Irvin. I'm actually in downtown Knoxville, Tennessee right now, and it's raining like crazy. But anyway, I wanted to ask, you said that they're going to give the Palestinians East Jerusalem now. Is that where the Eastern Gate is and the Temple Mount? And another thing I wanted to mention is when I was at the Dan Jerusalem on our last trip, I spoke in the early morning. I get out early, and I'm an early riser like being a truck driver is, and there were two guards or guys at the front door there. One of them's name was Michael, and he was part of the Blue and White Party, and he wasn't that interested in getting a third temple rebuilt. He said, it's not that big of a deal. But let me ask you, what is the percentage of people in Jerusalem? Is it? I would think it would be like 80% people would want to see the third temple built. And also, you mentioned that tomorrow they're going to be talking about the parameters of the timeline. What do you think about all that?
Okay, Jim, I'm going to have to answer you quick because we just have a small amount of time left. But your main question is Trump's peace plan. What does it do about the Eastern Gate? That stays with Israel. What does it do about the Temple Mount? That stays with Israel. What's it do about the Mount of Olives? That stays with Israel. I don't know whether you remember or not, but when we were there last year, there's a wall that goes from Bethlehem and then it swings into Jerusalem and it divides the part of Jerusalem that's mostly controlled by the Arabs from the Israeli portion of Jerusalem. It's way out in an area called Abu Dis. It would be over on the eastern side of the Mount of Olives. That is where the line would be drawn. There's already a wall built there, and that would keep the Arab side separated. So as you can see, that's where their capital would be. But most of Jerusalem, as you and I saw it, would be right there. It would remain under Israeli control.
So what about the, like I said, this guy Michael that was at the Dan Jerusalem, he was part of the Blue and White Party, and he was not a big fan of Netanyahu, obviously.
Jim, let me answer you quickly here because we're out of time. About 55% of Israel today would like to see the temple rebuilt. That's the last statistic that I read. With that, I want to get to some other callers. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Your call was very important. Thank you for it. We appreciate. Let's go now to Stephen calling from Nevada.
Yes, hi. Praise the Lord, Brother Baxter.
How are you, Stephen?
Wonderful. Hey, I had a quick question. Just wanted to hear your thought on this. I had heard that there's precedent that the Lord will be returning around the Feast of Trumpets. I believe that's Rosh Hashanah, sometime September, October. That there's precedent in the Bible that says that would be the timing of his return. If that's so, and the peace treaty is signed 7 years before that, do you feel that the peace treaty would have to be signed in September or October, sometime around Rosh Hashanah?
I don't know the answer to that for sure, Stephen. There are many people who truly believe that, and that's not totally without basis, because we do know other major feast days have been fulfilled by major Christian events. For example, Jesus was crucified on the day right before Passover. He was crucified on the day called Preparation Day. Then the Holy Ghost was first poured out on the day of Pentecost, the Feast of Pentecost. So many people do believe that since the Bible says the Lord will come with a great sound of a trumpet, they believe that that will happen during the Feast of Trumpets. The Apostle Paul said the Lord would come at the last trump. So could it happen? If it will happen that way, and we know that the rapture and the second coming of Jesus occurs 7 years after the peace plan, then the big question you're asking is, does that mean the peace plan would be signed in September or October, the time of the Feast of Trumpets? I'm not saying it will be, don't know for sure, but it's very possible, especially since all this action is now swinging before the United Nations. The UN General Assembly is held in September. Wouldn't they love by September to have all these details worked out and have this huge peace signing during September of this year? And that would be before the Americans' elections. It would be perfect. Is that the way it's going to happen? I don't know, but I'm glad you brought it up.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Stephen. Let's see, do we have time for one more? Let's go now to Rebecca calling from Louisiana. Hello, Rebecca.
Hello, Brother Baxter. I just have a quick question, and I'll take my answer off the air so I don't hold you up.
All right.
I'm with you. I believe this is the treaty. Do you believe that in our 7 years, tribulation starts? I know that it's kind of be specific to the Middle East and Europe, but do you think the bulk of the tribulation is actually going to see America?
Okay, thank you very much, Rebecca, for your call. You were sort of breaking up, but I catch the essence of what you're asking. Do we think the mark of the beast, 666, will come to America? Do we believe there's a huge economic collapse coming to the U.S.? I don't see any scripture for that, and I absolutely do see scripture for the fact that the Antichrist and his power will never reach America. The Bible teaches in Revelation 12:14 that we will defend Israel. That's the woman with 12 stars around her head, the 12 stars being the 12 tribes of Israel. We will be defending Israel during the final 3.5 years. So that means we're going to be against the Antichrist, and there was no way that we would be fighting against him while forcing our citizens to take his mark, because the mark of the beast will be declaring allegiance to him. So I do not believe the mark of the beast is coming to America. Do I believe the Bible prophesies an economic collapse for America? I don't. The Bible says, as it was in the days of Noah, so shall it be in the days of the coming Son of Man. They were eating, they were drinking, they were marrying, they were given in marriage until the day that Noah closed the door to the ark. So I don't believe that's the way it's going to happen. A lot more to talk about there, but we're totally out of time. Thanks to all of you. Our number is 800 Endtime. God bless you. We'll see you tomorrow.
This has been End of the Age, brought to you by the faithful partners of Endtime Ministries. If you're not currently a partner with Endtime Ministries, or if you would like more information, we invite you to call us at 1-800-ENDTIME. That's 1-800-363-8463, or visit us online at endtime.com.
Thank you for watching. If you liked this video, subscribe to our YouTube channel and like our Facebook page.